He says, I don't think anyone on our team has any idea those are our values.
Hmm.
And this is a very successful organization.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's an issue. Maybe we need to just talk about that. But
Yeah.
that is most organizations. That's most teams. You have values, you don't even know what they are. You have a mission, you
Mhm.
don't even know what it is.
Welcome to the How Soccer Explains Leadership podcast, where we explore leadership principles through the lens of the beautiful game.
Welcome back to How Soccer Explains Leadership. Thanks a lot for being a part of the conversation and being a part of this People Advantage series that we're doing here in season 14. We are now on episode 9. If you haven't listened to the first 8, definitely go back and check those out because this episode, like all the others, build on each other. So this one is, if you haven't listened to the first 8, you might be a little lost in this episode. Maybe not, but definitely encourage you to go check those out. I'm Phil Dark, your host. With me is my co-host, my brother, Paul Jobson. Paul, you ready to talk about really how we can actually put all of this insight into practice and start changing behaviors with this information?
Yeah, man. There's just a lot that we've kind of raced through over the last 8 episodes. Definitely could go deeper and all of it. And like I think I mentioned before, in another episode, go back over, the 200 episodes we've done and probably go deeper into some of these topics. But yeah, man, let's jump in.
Yeah, and I think that is important. I don't want to we haven't talked enough about that I think in our uh, just the history of this podcast that none of these episodes, well, maybe a couple of them, we've had a World Cup episode and something else that are not evergreen, but most of
Yeah.
these episodes are for forever. Like they're going to
Yeah.
apply now and in 50, 60, 200 years, right? They're still going to apply. So that's why part of why I love doing this. It's not just talking about something that doesn't matter. These are things that will help you not just in soccer either, but that's why we talk about life and leadership, right? So
Yeah.
so this one is really really important because we have given you a lot of information. We've talked about a lot of different things, a lot of insight. But insight doesn't change people, right? How many times have you heard a talk, uh been to a conference, gone to church, listened to a sermon, whatever, and next day someone says, "Oh, what was it about?" What verse was it on? Oh yeah, it was something in John, maybe. It was something about,
Mhm.
you know. But it's just like we have this fire hose of information. That's why I really like what we're doing this because it's bite size and it's every couple of weeks. So hopefully you're having time to think through this. If you're binging it, take a little time after each episode to write some notes, see how it applies to you. But the other thing about this is, we need repetition, right? Space repetition is one of the critical things in learning. So how can we do that in the context of our coaching, of our leadership, of in our families? What does that look like as we're wanting to talk about building culture? We talk about values and having values become part of our DNA. What does that look like, Paul?
Yeah, it's such an important topic. It's funny when you're saying that. I think about like when I was a kid and you'd go to a church camp, right? And you're there for 4 or 5 days a week, whatever it may be. And you come back from church camp and you're just on fire, like you're ready to go take on the world. You go to the worst, the most underserved parts of the world, and you're ready to go. And then a week later, you're just kind of right back into your routine, right? So because the repetition you're doing in that 4 to 5 to a week, the repetition you're doing of ministry and worshiping and leading and loving and all that stuff. Then you get home and get back in your other
Hmm.
routine. What is your routine? But it's not that you can't bring those things home, your daily devotional, your, whatever it may be. What is your routine? And I think that comes into leadership as well. If there are things that are important to you as a leader that you want to be important with your team, there's got to be repetition on it. It can't be like we talked about in the last episode. It can't just be words on a page that you just look at, or maybe you put it or you don't ever look at it. But there's got to be some repetition in there of repeating actions, things like that. If we're going to say that community is important within our organization, we got to create community. We have to meet with one another face to face. We can't just text each other. If we have a problem, we have to communicate with each other. So just repeating things that we hold valuable, and we talk about accountability, right? Are we holding others in our organization accountable to those frameworks and things that we've said are important? So that's what comes to mind first when I think about that, is just that, how do you create that representation as a team preseason, right? You've got like it's easy to like it's during preseason for us. You had at the time, I think you had about 2 weeks before school started, and it's just soccer, soccer, soccer. It could be 3 sessions a day or 4. There should be classroom, be outside, and the kids and the coaches are just eating, breathing, sleeping soccer. And then once school starts, all of a sudden it's kind of like there's a shift. It's not, obviously school was very, very important, and it should be, but you lose a little bit of focus because the repetitions start to change.
Yeah. So many thoughts are going through my head about even outside of soccer. I recently had a client I'm talking with, and I think it was a prospective client at that point. And I said, well, since your values are X, Y, Z, and he just started chuckling. Because I said, since that, like, we can talk about that in the training that we're going to be doing with your team. And he just started chuckling. And I said, what? And he says, I don't think anyone on our team has any idea those are our values.
Hmm.
And this is a very successful organization.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's an issue. Maybe we need to just talk about that. But that is most organizations. That's most teams. You have values, you don't even know what they are. You have a mission, you don't even know what it is. And so remember what we talked about, if you heard when I was talking about the lead and love well and be a great teammate. The mission for our soccer team. This is high school girls. And at the beginning of the year, they need to memorize them. They might not internalize them yet, but they need to at least memorize them, or they don't play. I'll spot check before a game and say, what's the mission? What's a value? And I'll point to a person. And if they're not doing it, they're not at least not starting that game if they were supposed to.
Right.
And they're like, oh, why? Because it's that important.
Yeah.
It's that important. Becomes internalized at the banquet. I'm up on stage. I'm like, all right, what's the mission? What's the values? I hope if that's all they remember from high school soccer, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Because those values, little secret, it's not a secret, have nothing, they have something to do with soccer, but they have more to do with their flourishing beyond soccer. And so, and that's a part of this too, is this spaced repetition, soccer is going to end. So how are we continually pounding into them? And if you have rules, like we have a rule, there's no shin guards. I mean, not no shin guards. You have to wear shin guards during practice.
What?
I know. You have to wear shin guards during practice, which is becoming less and less. Now it's like, I literally saw an Instagram post that was saying, don't wear shin guards if you're out at a tryout, if you're at a training, because you'll look like you're a rec player. And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I agree.
There's one piece of protection you are required to have in soccer. There's reason for it, right? And now they're starting to ban these potato chip shin guards. But that's a different story. But the point is, why I don't just say this is the rule. I will ask them, why do we have the shin guard rule? And the veterans will sometimes remember. Why? Well, what is one of our values? It's sweat more. Well, when you sweat more, does that mean you're playing harder, right? Yeah. When you have shin guards on, you'll play harder. You'll go in harder. Or if you go in just as hard without shin guards, that's just stupid because you could break your shin. Right? So it teaches something, and there's the why behind it. So try it. Part of that repetition is every time we have something that's going on, how do we link it to one of our values? How do we link it to our vision? How do we link it to things and not just have, these rules without that explanation, not just have, in our training sessions afterwards, let's circle up, not just do it after games, but let's circle up and do some shout outs that link it to a value. Have it in practice required to link to a value, maybe. I don't know. These are just different ideas that I've instituted. But to have a company out there have values that they've taken time at some point in their life span of a company to create values, which takes a long time, by the way. They have them on their website, and the people don't even know what they are. They're clearly not living them out together. They're not accountable to them because they don't even know what they are.
Yeah.
So that accountability and all those other things only happen if you actually know them. So
Yeah. Again, it's words on a page. It looks good on a website. It's feel good, but it it's really not worth your time to create it if you don't really believe it. It
100%.
and it really can direct the path of the culture of your organization, and you know do it right, do it well, and really lean into it, because I think you well, I know, I mean, it makes a better team. It's better, it's more cohesive that you have. I said it this way. you know if we sit down at the beginning of a year and we set clearly what our goals are, whatever those goals are, we set the goals. Uh as an organization, we may, as individuals, have different ideas of how we might get to that goal, right? And that's when you sit in a room and you maybe argue and discuss about how to get to that goal. But if ultimately you both can agree that that's the goal, and that the argument is healthy because we're both trying to figure out the best way to get to that
Mm-hmm.
goal, then the argument is healthy, right? If we disagree on the goal, then we're just having an argument,
Yeah.
right? But let's agree on the goal, what we're going after, so that we can hold each other accountable to what the goals are. And there may be multiple goals. So you guys say, well, hey, if we're going to reach this goal, but we still got to attain that goal, we can't do that, right? Oh yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right. So I think it's important that that we're setting those things appropriately for that. And then as we're talking about in this topic, like how do we continue to reiterate that and reinforce those things, and have frameworks around those things. I mean, the shout outs, I think, are I think an easy one that people really don't do, or it's very
Mm-hmm.
scripted. We've done it before where it's maybe a middle of a practice, and I don't feel like things are going very well for whatever reason. I know there's been distractions during the day or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
and we'll just bring the team together and just do shout outs during the middle of a practice,
Mm.
because we need that, like, kind of positive reinforcement
Yeah.
and fire to get going. So sometimes it doesn't need to be scripted. Sometimes it just needs to be, okay, I think this is what we need right now. Let's just bring it together and take 10, 15, might be 30 minutes,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. What does the team need in the moment? So those are frameworks, I think, that you can bring in as pieces to help, maybe reinvigorate or reintroduce, or reemphasize the things that are important for your culture, for your team.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this episode, man, there's so much more to this, as everyone out there knows. But I'll just say, even in this podcast, right? We have tried to institute spaced repetition, either recasting episodes or having multiple people talk about mental health. Multiple people talk about, why do we have similar questions about overcoming adversity and defining moments? Because we want to remind you of the important things that you need to know, that players need to know, that coaches need to know, that people out there and doing business need to know. How many times do we say the same things over and over? Well, because, it's important. The important things we need to repeat, because, if you're parenting, if you're coaching, if you're leading people, if you say it once, it doesn't stick. And it's for those times where things aren't going well that it has to become muscle memory. If it's not muscle memory, you will go negative. So I remember this last year, we had, a very healthy culture. I didn't have the best year because the talent just wasn't on par with the other, and we had a very young team. We have a very talented team, just
Mhm.
very young team. And the results weren't coming, but one of our values was spread positive, contagious energy. If you would have come out to that last game of the year, you would have thought we were, one of the best teams in the conference, in the state, because they were so encouraging. They were just encouraging each other to the last whistle, going hard to the last whistle. And that came from their values. That came from accountability with each other. And we didn't, they were self-leading in all of that. Like, we as coaches just had to encourage it and kind of give
Mhm.
that push, and they just went.
Yeah.
And it was great. And that's when, as a coach, you can sit back and go, we've done at least something right. Right. You can't, in high school especially, you can't pick the team that comes to you, but you can encourage them to their best. So last thoughts?
No, that's a good place to stop, man. Just continuing to, I mean, I think, like you said, as coaches, you don't always get those moments like that where you get to see your culture in effect, in process. But when you have those moments, you really got to gather that and really just sit back and appreciate that. So it's cool you had that opportunity.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, guys. Thanks for being a part of this show. You can always go to our show notes and check out about Warrior Way, about Dark Leadership Group to find out more about those, to connect with Paul and me if you'd like to learn more about how you can implement these ideas, these concepts into your teams, into your clubs, into your programs, into your businesses. And also, we hope that you're taking everything you're learning from this show and you're using it to be a better coach, a better leader, a better parent, better spouse, a better player, better in everything that you do. And you continually remind yourself that soccer does explain life and leadership. Thanks a lot. Have a great couple weeks.